Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with another hot take. Now look, I gotta talk about this Gateway Pundit article. Now it's only the one. This is only one attorney in saying this. It's not a lot to back it up, but it's something I suspected all along. Trump attorney Lin Wood. Chinese communists use computer fraud to mail ballot fraud to interfere with our national election. And why wouldn't they? They're communist. They want to undermine the United States. They especially want to undermine it now that Donald Trump has screwed them on this trade deal. They have every reason in the world to do this, and we're open enough society that they can. Um, and these woke morons embracing diversity and inclusion blindly based on race would be happy to embrace the right color of Chinese agent or the right person, whether they are pretending to be an Asian person of who is gender fluid and is disabled. I mean, that's all they would need to do, right? You just check off enough boxes and boom, you move to the head of the line and they instantly trust you. Right, doggy? You're interrupting everything as usual. Come here. Come here. I got you. Okay. So let's read a little bit of this article. And again, it's the Gateway Pundit, I know. But seems like a lot of their Dominion stuff seems to be true or close to being true. Earlier today, Trump campaign attorney Lin Wood posted several tweets on the Dominion voter fraud scandal. Later today, lawyer Lin Wood Jr. joined Howie Carr to discuss his voter fraud work in the Trump campaign in Georgia. He reassured Howie that Joe Biden will never be president and that he and many others, including military industrial complex and the media, may go to jail for decades plotting against the country. Bit hyperbolic there. I don't think Joe Biden will go to jail. Come on, man. Come on, man. You can't put Joe Biden in jail. He's too old. He won't even know where he is. Why does Joe Biden have more and more southern accent when I do him? And now, tonight, Lin Wood blamed the Chinese communists for the interference in the election. Communist timeline. 1. Infiltrate media, local, state, and national government officials, ideology, money, and extortion over 2 decades. 2. Dominion voting systems deployed in U.S. prior to 2020 election computer fraud. 3. Unleash biological weapon COVID-19 mail ballot fraud. Communist timeline 2? Oh no, it's the same one. Chinese communists use computer fraud and mail ballot fraud to interfere with our national election. They thought they could be had and they could overthrow our duly elected president without firing a shot. They were wrong. See, if this were true, number one, I think people in the intelligence community would know it. They run the internet, and they run things. They run the surveillance state. So unless they wanted China to win, and I don't see any reason why they would, because they don't want to work for the Chinese, they would know it instantly. Now, that being said, I do think the Chinese have played a role, at the very least, in exacerbating our problems, because it's to their benefit to exacerbate the problems. If you look at what they're doing at the UN right now, they're part of the UN Rights Watch. That includes them, I think it's Iraq, North Korea, like all the worst countries are in this committee for human rights. All the country with human rights abuses, basically, are judging the United States for their human rights abuses. And that's crazy. I mean, that's literally like saying, well, we have, a guy who's one of the most honest human beings on the face of the earth, but we need to judge him. So let's get 10 prisoners from the worst prisons of America to judge him. I mean, that's what it's the equivalent of. Because the Chinese are in no position to lecture anybody about human rights. None whatsoever. They are the worst human rights abusers by far in the world today. They are way worse than even North Korea by sheer volume. I mean, they're committing genocide against the Uyghurs. They are way worse than Saudi Arabia or any dictator regime you could think of, way worse than Saddam Hussein ever was. They just kill you. I mean, like Saddam Hussein at least had to go through the motions of being kind of semi-legitimate and had to appease some factions within in his own country. The communists don't have those constraints. They have no constraints. Their only constraints are, you know, either they will ride that train until it absolutely the wheels just come flying off, or they'll be in complete and utter control of everybody. That's the only two options for those communists. And that's the way it was in the Soviet Union. All the way up until the end, they had absolutely control of everybody. You know, legally speaking, not in actual practicality. In practical terms, they don't. But, you know, the Chinese have better technology and more money. The Soviets were terrible at money. Because I think in a large extent they sort of believed in the communism, that the communist system could work. The Chinese kind of know it's BS. They kind of have the dynamic to at least recognize, yeah, we're not going to really make any money there. We gotta adopt some aspects of capitalism in order to get ahead here. But it's good that we have at least one guy who's eyeing up the Chinese, going, I bet these guys are responsible for part of this. I know they are. Because that'll first put the Chinese on alert. And they're likely to just pull everything back and not do any more damage, which will be a good thing because they'll be too afraid about getting caught. Which means that some of this nonsense, some of this woke nonsense might die down a little. They might have to be very careful about, you know, putting their money behind some of these things. But in terms of the computer fraud and mail ballot fraud, that has yet to be proven. And, you know, the computer stuff, I don't know. I don't know if it can be proven. The mail ballot stuff, some of it will be, but I don't think you'll ever be able to connect it to a single Chinese, you know, agent. How is that? Unless you catch an entire ring of these people. And that seems highly unlikely in this 2-month period. But who knows? This is 2020, baby. Maybe Trump's on top of this. Maybe they've been watching guys from the beginning. Maybe that's the big surprise. Maybe that's the big reveal here. They're gonna round up about a bunch of Chinese agents and say, here they are, the guys that fixed the election. Here they are, the guys that hacked the voting machines. Now try to deny it, Democrats. You know, if that happens, the Democrats would be forced to, well, they wouldn't cop to being involved because they probably weren't. I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't believe that most Democrats, even the higher up idiots, would sign on with the Chinese. They wouldn't need to do it to cheat the way they've been cheating. However, maybe a handful of them got bribed, and they certainly don't want the optics of that. So they will pull back hard against China, really hard. You know, whether or not Joe Biden himself is bought and paid for by China, you know, some people are saying, well, he's going to be very soft on China. I don't know about that now because Joe has to worry about how that looks. He has been exposed. Even though the mainstream media won't really cover it, he has been exposed. He has to be very careful not to look soft on China. So he may have to pull it back at least for a couple of years until things really die down. But the Hunter Biden scandal's not going away. No. It's taken a back seat to this, obviously, but it's coming back. Oh, yeah. Mark my words. And perhaps Lin Wood will be involved. This guy seems to be involved in everything, right? first the Covington kids, then Kyle Rittenhouse, and now he's on board with the Trump train. It's a lot of stuff going on with this guy. He's one to watch. And Gateway Pundit seems to be on the right track. Now, I know a lot of you had said, "Oh, you got to be careful of that. It was just some guy's blog," and they have had their problems, but a lot of media outlets, especially the newer ones, have. And these guys seem to be on top of this. At the very least, they're worth checking out, even if they're wrong sometimes. I mean, you got to take everything you see on the internet with a grain of salt. I don't take this as gospel, but it's kind of interesting, and we'll see what happens.